the end of a triptych. We have recording. So we have the end of the triptych. 2 talks ago we talked about recovery. Last week we talked about prevention, and today we're talking about resilience as a whole. So I see there's quite a few people already, so I don't see any reason to wait any further. Welcome everyone. Sit back, and I hope you enjoy this talk. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Dharini. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to colleagues joining us from different time zones. It is my distinct pleasure to host today an enriching session of the talk series. The session today will continue and build upon the wealth of knowledge and perspectives shared by experts in the previous urban sessions. And I'm confident our endeavor today will be to expand the frontiers of knowledge further through deliberations on issues intimately connected to urban resilience. That is the existing need as well as the emerging priority. The focus of our deliberations today is urban resilience against climate change. How are cities adapting to climate change? With over half the humanity already urbanized, we are witnessing a convergence of people, infrastructure, socioeconomic development assets, livelihood opportunities, along with that of risks of all typologies. Especially an already evident increase in the occurrence, frequency, and magnitude of urban-centric disasters and other extreme events, including their cascading and systemic impacts across all walks of life. And needless to say, the processes associated with climate change are magnifying these impacts with heightened regional and global manifestations. It might be apt to ourselves of the 2014 IPCC reports about urban risk and resilience context. And it says that the vulnerability of urban areas goes beyond mere exposure to extreme weather events, as, and I quote now, cities are caught in a perfect storm of population growth, escalating adaptation needs, and substantial development deficits created by a short of human and financial resources, increasing level of informality, poor governance, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, poverty, and growing inequality, unquote. Recognition of multiple converging and interconnected resilience building challenges in urban centers calls for an increasing shift towards equally, if not more, complementary, mutually reinforcing and interconnected approaches in our policy and programmatic action. But despite this acknowledgement, chronic bottlenecks continue to persist. How can these bottlenecks be addressed better? How can we reshape our policy and programmatic work towards more coherent and systemic approaches? What can be done to reorient our current urban resilience and sustainability related work and bring about a cultural and behavior shift, both at administrative and societal levels? These and many more complex challenges continue to bedevil many of us as practitioners, especially in organizations like the UNDP and others. With a view to get some insights into these issues and to enable us to think through better to inform our work and practice, we have with us today an eminent panel of renowned international experts who will be sharing their valuable perspectives based on their extensive experience and expertise in this area. We also have with us practitioners from 2 countries who are engaged in pursuing policy and programmatic work on urban resilience, and will be sharing their practical experiences as well as articulating the impediments they face in advancing action on urban resilience related issues. With apologies for a rather long introduction, let's look towards benefiting from our panel of experts and practitioners today. The flow of discussion is proposed as follows. We will begin with our two erudite experts, Mr. Gareth Byatt and Professor Bharat Dahiya. And a personal disclosure here, I would like to acknowledge their unstinted support to me over the past years and contribution towards the formulation of UNDP's urban risk management and a resilience strategy. Thank you so much for that. Their presentations will be followed by practitioners from Armenia, Mr. Armen Chilingaryan and Mr. Elen Sahradyan, and from North Macedonia, Ms. Ljubica, who are implementing ambitious urban resilience initiatives in their respective countries. They will be sharing their work as well as some of the constraints or challenges they face to advance meaningful action. Their interventions will be followed by an interactive session with questions from the floor. However, I also intend to make the most of the precious time we have fortunately been able to secure from our eminent experts and invite our CEO colleagues to seek guidance on any particular aspect of their work from Professor Bharat and Mr. Gareth. It's an excellent opportunity to benefit from their rich global experience and erudition on this subject. And a small housekeeping announcement: as a facilitator, I will give our panelists a sort of heads up about 3 minutes before their completion of the time slot to ensure that we are able to keep space for an interactive session at the end. With this, let me invite our first speaker of the talk today, Mr. Gareth Byatt, who is an independent risk and resilience expert. He has worked for over 25 years and has been involved in the development of urban environments and placemaking. He has worked as a consultant and advisor on risk and resilience related issues with a range of organizations globally, and his engagement spans various industries, infrastructure sectors like energy, telecom, etc. And his interventions are attuned towards improving the urban fabric. He also undertakes research on urban resilience and disaster risk, including with leading academic institutions around the world, and is an active member of the risk institutes and practitioner forums. In his talk, he will describe a systems approach to urban resilience and how measures to address climate change and climate adaptation are integral to a thriving urban system, and describe how ideas, innovation, and initiatives are helping play their part in tackling the global climate change challenge. With these words, let me invite Mr. Gareth Byatt for your presentation today. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. I will give me just a moment, and I will just right. Okay, I'm just about to share my screen, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this discussion today. Very much looking forward to what we talk about. I just want to check beforehand. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. Is it coming through? Great. Okay. As a risk consultant, I always like to make sure that I'm managing my risks properly, and that includes making sure that the technology is working well. So I hope that you'll find this particular discussion topic of interest, and I hope that my piece will help to contribute towards that. So thank you very much, Rajiv, and I very much appreciate the introduction. So what I'm going to talk through today, I want to talk about the challenge that we face and give an introduction, if you like, to one type of urban system and how it relates to climate change. Then want to talk about some examples of acting upon those challenges and applying this system to climate and disaster risk. And then I want to be able to focus on some of the aspects of value that occur from this. So that includes some thoughts on where resourcing and funding comes from, some perspectives on measurement, and the societal value linkages that we can achieve from this. So I hope that makes sense. And I do just want to pick up on the point that Rajiv was mentioning just now about the IPCC. And of course, we all know about the valuable reports that have been produced, and the connotations and the aspects of urban resilience are very much stitched into those reports. And I could have highlighted many valuable aspects, but I've just picked up on a couple of elements here around the fact that the report authors stress the need for integrated risk management. Single risks cannot be managed in isolation, as mentioned in this little screen snippet at the top center of this page. And then there's references to how we need to be able to make sure that we can tackle urban infrastructure properly, take advantage of the opportunities. We know there's a lot of rich information in the IPCC reports. And of course, in the most recent COP event and those preceding it, there have been a lot of discussion which has related to urban environments, not solely urban environments, but a lot of it has been linked to and relates to urban environments. And the C40 cities being an example, they have been very active with this, and the engagement of global mayors has been critical to this. So there's a lot of impetus, if you like, to be able to see how we can really drive forward action. This page here has got a couple of examples of the C40 map of cities with a climate action plan, and there are others that aren't in the C40 mix, of course. And there's a lot of discussion. There are news reports, aspects from the Systems Change Lab about areas of focus for climate change, including land use and optimizing buildings and the energy and how we take advantage of all of these different aspects. So there's a lot going on. What I want to focus on in particular today with you is to describe a system and some of the aspects and elements of it that can relate to climate change. And this particular page up here, this is describing why we want to be able to achieve a particular kind of vision, the what in terms of the actual system, or an example, if you like, of a system, and I'll be honing in on that circle diagram in the bottom of this second chunk in just a second. And then how we actually implement it and what we actually achieve as a result is, of course, why we want to be able to make these changes. So fundamentally, this is one example of an urban system that I use, and I've got a more detailed diagram of this coming up on the next couple of slides. Essentially, it's around how can we actually make sure that climate change is stitched into everything that we do, so that incorporates our governance, that incorporates everything around the physical side of urban environments, and of course, different contexts in different places. The ecological system that they are essentially integrated with. In the past, perhaps we've tended to build on or build over ecological systems, but there's a much greater understanding that we need to build with them and leverage and understand and use all of the different ecological aspects. And of course, the crucial socioeconomic side of things. And climate change is mapped into all of that. And I've got a couple of examples here. You won't be able to read all of the details on the screen, but don't concern yourselves about that, because there's about 80 different aspects revolving around that small wheel there. The point really that I'd like to make is that when we are looking at challenges we face, and they are interlinked, as Rajiv has mentioned, they are many, they are changing, they are complex, they are adapting. If we can look at different aspects and map them across in different ways, whether it is how we're focusing on the climate change and disaster risk and how it links up to the physical environment, the other aspects of the ecological environment, the socioeconomic environment, how we govern our cities, and importantly, how we learn and move forward from things, never standing still, not leaving anyone behind, then we can use this to help to actually derive scopes of work, if you like, that can be incorporated into programs, projects, portfolios of activities. So one of the things that I find most valuable of systems thinking, of all of these different aspects and how they do connect together, is that it helps us to make sure that we consider lots of different views. And I've got a few examples of that coming up. So I won't go through all of these 5 aspects in my discussion here today. I'll talk briefly about a couple, the first 2 basically, heat and flooding. And I want to be able to provide just a few examples of how using a systems approach can help us to be able to think about long-term planning, help us to think about specific aspects all across the system, so that the governance requirements that we need. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion around heat and its clear linkage to climate change overall. But in terms of an ecological perspective, what is appropriate in terms of what we can do with the city or the town that we're focusing on, where it is and its context is obviously key. Some urban environments are in a position where they can leverage and use and link into blue infrastructure easier than others. It depends on whereabouts you are, of course, and likewise with the green environments. From a physical side of things, an awful lot in that is something that I do a particular large amount on, in terms of buildings and the structure, the transport and mobility hierarchy, how we actually are intelligent with actually capturing and potentially reusing heat from many of those different solutions, how they connect together with smart city type of solutions. Socioeconomically, of course, how we actually deal with and respond to heat. We've seen many examples of where the forethought and early planning and involvement of different types of people and groups across society has really benefited that. And I mentioned that learning side of things too as well. So making sure that we do learn from what goes on around the world. Yes, there are many challenges that we have, but there are also good examples as well. So a sort of common theme to all of this is thinking about what our challenge is, whatever it happens to be. In the example I put on the screen here, I'm talking about the urban heat island effect, but of course there could be various different aspects interconnected dealing with heat. Take an urban system to be able to make sure that we consider all of the aspects to it, and then what are the actions and changes that we need to be able to carry out. I've got just a couple of examples here. Clearly can't go through all of them, but if we think about an underlying theme of having program and project management, to think about all of the different projects, activities, where they're funded, the scopes of work, who we involve, all of those kind of things. And then a couple of examples of some tools and techniques and applications from a framework that I use. Stakeholders, looking at different types of scenarios, how we actually work with those stakeholders properly to be able to apply those kind of things, and how we learn properly. So here are a couple of examples, only examples of course, but looking at a stakeholder wheel. Each context is different, of course, but if we think about what our system is, and if we think about the different groups of stakeholders that we have, it may benefit us to be able to think about the influence and interest that they have, and where we want to try and work with all of our different stakeholders, recognizing that they'll have different types of areas of focus to them, and this is something that can be very useful. If you take the example of just one of those groups, philanthropic stakeholders, if you look at the Arch Rock Foundation, they've got the Heat Action Platform and advisory and governance. There's various other ones, of course, both in the public and the private sector, from different types of stakeholders that we can hopefully tap into. And then if we use different tools such as scenario analysis, there are various different ways to do it. There's some good private sector examples of carrying out this kind of activity. We can hopefully use this to be able to de-bias our decision making, to be able to make sure that we involve a range of people in thinking about what those scenarios are. So we go back to that stakeholder map, if you like, to make sure that we involve people and think about what's required in order to then actually pursue projects and programs in the right way. Similar kind of example, flooding, the second one of that group of 5 that I put up on the slide earlier. Clearly, we've seen many devastating floods this year, previous years, and the linkage with the climate change that we're seeing from science-based information that we're seeing really does seem to be clear. So again, applying the system model to this, so looking at this from what is involved in terms of governance, the ecological environment, our physical environment, how it connects together, the vital aspects of socioeconomics, and how we make sure with pragmatic and practical activities that we support people properly. All of it, of course, needs to be funded appropriately, can help us to go through things. So again, similar kind of approach to what I mentioned earlier with heat. What's our particular challenge, or what are the connected challenges that we have? How can we apply the system to it to make sure that we cover everything? What are our actions going to be, and how do we apply good program and project management to those actions to make sure that we can succeed properly? So a couple of examples again coming up. Perhaps some of you are familiar with a tool called the bow tie. This is just an example, but it's a way of unpacking and describing a risk so that you can understand causes and consequences. And what are those controls on the left-hand side to stop something happening, and on the right-hand side to stop it getting worse if it actually occurs. So this is just an example, and you can use this kind of tool in varying degrees of detail, but it's part of a toolkit, if you like, to help prevent things like what we're seeing here. I'm not actually going to show the video here, but to help to prevent some of those negative things from occurring. And there's lots of support available as well from business stakeholders. Rajiv kindly mentioned that I work in a number of different industries, and you'll recognize some of the names here, Arab Allianz. There are, of course, others as well in engineering and in insurance and in construction and property and retail and other private sectors as well. So there's a lot that business stakeholders can offer in this perspective. And we can learn a lot, of course, from different places around the world, whether it is in Europe, whether it's in Asia, whether it is in South America. There's a lot of good learnings and information that we can tap into as part of using our system properly. And then maybe sometimes, depending on what it might be, there may be opportunities to involve society in things such as games as well. So I'm not suggesting this is an actual game to use, but these are just some thoughts for people to consider in terms of whether to help people to understand how they can play their part and how they can act upon things, whether certain things such as gaming may help as well. And crucially, something I mentioned earlier was the need to make sure that the resourcing and the finances and therefore the financial mechanisms are in place. And I think increasingly we're seeing that is being coupled with what is value for us all. For sure, financial value and economic value is fundamental to this, but economic value can also be done in terms of sustainable value as well. And I think there's greater recognition across all different sectors of the value that this has, in order to make sure that we can avoid things such as the costs of catastrophes in the management of these types of things. So again, it may be possible to apply that 1, 2, 3 step type of approach here to looking at different challenges with finance and the finance sector, the private finance sector. What are ways to be able to work with them purposefully, to be able to engage them, make sure the right kind of finances are in place, different types of bond arrangements, for example, so that we can make sure that we drive these kind of things forward. There's certainly a will to do it. And then just quickly, a few thoughts on monitoring and action, monitoring actions and progress, if you like. I'm an adherent to the Plan, Do, Check, Act, or PDCA, simple kind of model as part of using systems and projects and managing programs and the like. And there are, of course, different ways to be able to manage these things. Couple of examples here. I mentioned briefly earlier some of the aspects around science-based targeting and science-based approach to things. So you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a little example screenshot there of some of the ways that the CDP and ICLEI and an alliance there was put together. But fundamentally, I think the main thing here being that there are ways that we can measure value purposefully. Of course, the SDGs are part and parcel of that, and we can drill down into specific details linked to an urban system so that we can actually define what that is. So what we will do moving forward, well, we all know there's a lot to do, but there are some great actions taking place, and I've just put a couple of points up here in terms of the finances, how we link into the different aspects of the urban system, ecology, physical environment, socioeconomic environment, what we all do as individuals to make a difference and add value from that. And just in case it may be of interest as well, I'm certainly not supposing that I have the answer, but some of the things that I look at sometimes are whether there are ways to try and represent a system in a formulaic type of approach, if you like, looking at how we actually run things, the governance side of things, the finances and the value, how we plan things out through program and project management in portfolios, how we engage those different stakeholders, how we monitor, report and act, so that's the back end of the plan, do, check, act cycle, and how we can focus always on making sure that our skills, our capabilities are in the best place that they can possibly be. So there might be ways to introduce apps to be able to help with that. This is just a mock-up, by the way. These aren't real app screenshots, but just some ideas to be able to help with that. And on that point, conscious of time as well, I hope that's been of use and interest to people. And Rajiv, I will hand back to you, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Gareth, for the informative presentation. I really like your emphasis to treat urban as a system and to stitch a sort of climate change into it. You really illustrated with big examples, related to the heat and the flooding, other aspects that need to be thought of. I especially like your emphasis on the role of governance as being critical in terms of advancing action and advancing the thinking around systems approaches. And of course, that this will help improve the decision making through engagement of diverse stakeholders. That is, what we as UNDP try to, do that. Another interesting aspect that emerged from your talk has been about the use of simulated games and apps to help people understand some of these complex concepts that we talk about, like thinking, etc., how to make it more easily understandable to common people. It's an excellent idea, very innovative, and I think some of this definitely needs to be worked upon. So that connects us. Thank you so much for your thoughts and ideas, and that connects us to the next presentation from Professor Bharat Dahiya, who is Director of the Research Center for Sustainable Development and Innovation at the School of Global Studies, Thammasat University, Bangkok in Thailand. And he's also extraordinary professor of the School of Public Leadership, Stellenbosch University, Western Cape, South Africa. Let me also mention that Professor Dahiya has been among authors of the World City Report 2020, and he's an acknowledged expert on these issues. He's an award-winning he combines cutting-edge research, policies, and development factors aimed at examining and social, economic, environmental, and governance issues in the global urban context and at multiple geographical scales. As a team leader and urban planner, he has led the design and implementation of sustainable, resilient development projects in a number of countries. He is a sought speaker who has delivered keynotes at professional and academic forums and conferences. As an author, he has published books and strategy notes for the World Bank and the entities. He's editor for Spring Series, Advances in the 21st Century Human Settlement. Professor Bharat holds a PhD in Governance, Planning, and the Environment from the University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. I invite Professor Dahiya to take the floor for the next 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv Ji. Greetings from Bangkok to all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. First of all, I would like to thank UNDP ECA region for inviting me to share a few thoughts with all of you. And I would also like to congratulate the Innovation for Development team at the ECA region for organizing the Urban Talks series, which by the views and the attendance seems to be very important for the audience. So without further ado, I will share with you my presentation. And I would like to thank Rajiv for his most kind introduction. Just a quick check that you are able to see the presentation. Is this presentation visible?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. So today I will be speaking about strengthening disaster risk governance towards building urban resilience and the cost of inaction. I have divided this presentation in 4 parts. After introduction, we will straight go into several methods by which we could strengthen disaster risk governance towards building urban resilience. Then we will look at the cost of inaction and how to come out of that problem. And lastly, I'll share a few slides on pathways towards resilient cities, mainly to engage into some immediate action. So this is the graph from the latest global assessment report, which shows that the number of disaster events have been increasing, and by a projection, they would be increasing in the future also until 2030, when they may be more than 550 per year. The same GAR for 2022 also shows the direct economic loss from disasters since 1989. And in this chart also we see an upward trend. So which shows that the disasters are here to stay and we should be doing something about it. The imperative of DRR, especially in Europe and Central Asia region, is very important. According to some of the latest statistics available in 2019, more than 1,000 people were affected and close to 60,000 people saw their dwellings damaged, and more than 500 million of direct economic losses were sustained. Now, ECA region faces both geophysical as well as hydrometeorological hazards. There is a long history of disasters in this region. I remember the Izmit earthquake of 1999. I was working at the World Bank, and our unit, the urban sector unit, was planning to send a team for rapid needs assessment to Turkey. This is a chart showing the number of earthquakes that occurred in only 1 month of October 2020 in Central Asia. So we clearly see that there are so many risks and hazards in this region. And all this situation is confronted with a couple of other larger issues. First of them is the global urban megatrend. At present, we are at 57% of global urbanization, which is going to hit 60% by 2030. And there is an upward trend in terms of the size of cities when we look at urbanization being going up and up in terms of proportion of people living in different countries. There is also the size of cities that is growing and increasing. In addition to this, we have the climate crisis, and we are struggling, as COP27 showed earlier this month, between the sustainability scenario where the temperature, global average temperature has to be kept below 1.5 degree, or it may go up to 5 degrees Celsius by 2100, 5 degree Celsius increase if there is fossil fuel development is not stopped. This is another chart from the latest climate change report, which shows the human contribution to the observed change in heavy precipitation. And we clearly see that there is a large part of the world that will be experiencing heavy precipitation. Clearly, there are several focus areas towards disaster risk reduction and building urban resilience. And disaster risk governance is one of them. And governments are under pressure to take action and to take action fast. And it is in this context that we have certain emergent questions for governments as well as stakeholders. How to strengthen disaster risk governance towards building urban resilience? What's the cost of inaction? And how to initiate immediate action? So let's jump right in with the strengthening of disaster risk governance. And I have identified 3 action areas which are integrating policy cycle with DRR and urban resilience. Second is vertical dimension and multi-level governance. And third is horizontal dimension and multi-stakeholder partnerships. So the question is, when we integrate a policy cycle with DRR and urban resilience, where should we start from? And there may be several options to treat DRR and urban resilience, either as an add-on activity or one-time project, or as and when needed, or maybe none of the above. Perhaps the best way is to integrate DRR and urban resilience in the policy cycle. And then the question is, why should we actually do that? And this chart clearly shows that if we do the integration, it opens up multiple entry points for DRR and urban resilience actions. So on the upper part, you see the planning, and the lower part is implementing. And the policy cycle in the center, the donut, is aligned with the outer actions that you see around, which are related to DRR. So it may start from needs assessment, which may be linked to risk and resilience assessment, prioritizing and programming related to preparing strategies and action plans, assigning resources, which may be related to DRR and resilience financing, and then implementing and executing, and then looking at evaluation and how DRR governance mechanism and policies could be improved. So what would be the benefits of such an integration? So policymakers will benefit by developing a better understanding of DRR and urban resilience processes. They may be able to make relevant decisions to integrate these processes into the policy cycle at the local level. They will be encouraged to appoint a department or a team in the local government to initiate the process if they haven't started doing already. They will be able to allocate financial resources because they will see the immediate need for it. And through that process, they will be able to enhance the accountability of different sectors and different strategies and plans. And in this way, they will be able to build synergy for localization of the various global and national agendas. The second action area is the vertical dimension, or what we say multi-level governance. Now, we are all familiar with the Rio model of multi-level and multi-sectoral governance, where we have the vertical section ranging from the village or city level to the global level. And then in terms of separate stakeholders, we have the government, civil society, and business at different levels. And then the cube is also has the other dimension of different sectors and how each of these things work out. Now, it's good to clarify on what's a multi-level governance. It's a situation where public authorities in charge of a given policy domain, perhaps in this case DRR, belong to various levels of authority. And there are different policy competencies at different levels, and then budgetary resources are distributed across different levels of governments. Because of this, as we saw in the diagram, this increases the number of actors, organization, agendas, and policy, and they have to be coordinated in order to achieve coherent policies. Now, in multi-level governance, the vertical integration is important for coherence and guidance, resource allocation, and enhancing accountability. This is also important when it comes to policy development and implementation, particularly suited for different geographical scales. And this process of multi-level governance and vertical integration very much applies to disaster risk governance and urban resilience. For example, in the case of Makati city in the Philippines, there is a DRR and Management Act of 2010, and it mandates the institutionalization of DRR management system at the local level. So at the city level, there is a DRRM council and a DRR management office. In the case of Makati, you see here that in the DRRM council, there are urban and other departments from the city government. There are agencies from the national government, local NGOs and CSOs, faith-based organization, academia, and private sector. And all those then interact with international entities and organizations. And then at the office level, in terms of execution, there is a city level DRR management office. And at the lowest level of administrative unit, which is the barangay, there are 33 DRRM committees. And this system provides legal basis for mainstreaming DRR in local development plans along with the budget. And this helps in the enactment of relevant laws and policies which enhance urban resilience. The third action area would be horizontal, at the horizontal dimension, and that is to develop multi-stakeholder partnerships or MSPs. Now, MSPs are identified as a means of implementation in the 2030 agenda, as well as in the Sendai framework for DRR. And the three core principles of partnership is the convergence of interest that all stakeholders should be looking at. There should be complementarity of approach and resources, so there is no duplication, and there is a shared value in terms of the outcome. And this fits very well into the current development paradigm where co-design, co-implementation, and co-monitoring are emphasized. Now, in the Asia-Pacific region, there was the guidelines for multi-stakeholder partnerships were prepared, and this outlined several benefits, and I'm going to just touch a few. That is to enhance efficiency and effectiveness of actions and the partners, providing multi-actor integrated solutions, promoting co-financing of development initiatives, and creating value. It also improves open decision-making. And all in all, it helps as a function to support and ensure sustainability. Now, MSPs have a different stages to prepare, and we don't have to go in detail for it, but for example, initiation, formation, Then there is the implementation phase of the partnership, review of seeing how it has worked or not, and then reinvent or sustain phase of the partnership, where partnerships may be renewed or improved, or sometimes partnerships do not work. And here I would like to give an example of an initiative called Resilient Melbourne Action in Australia, which included several other initiatives. And one of them is the resilient communities in residential and mixed-use developments. And all cities are faced with this. So the goal of this initiative is to trial new modes of property development, which help to build social capital by considering the needs and ideas of residents, as well as to enhance or increase resilience. So what the city government did was that it invited stakeholders to submit expression of interest to link their projects with the initiative called Resilient Melbourne Action. And 5 projects were selected to learn what works and what can be scaled up. So in this way, this initiative brings together property developers, municipalities, researchers, and community groups to trial new ways of shaping neighborhoods and maybe more resilient neighborhoods. So what is the cost of inaction if we do not do all these things? And that takes us to the financial aspect. So one thing is that there are several points to consider. First is the cost and consequences of natural disasters, direct and indirect costs. The second is the need to improve the quality of long-term investments. And third is to the problem of poor budget allocations. So this is some data from the World Bank-based GFDRR, which shows the cost of natural disasters in Central Asia at the rate of 10 billion per year. And not only economic losses, there are people who are affected and lives and livelihoods that are disturbed. The second is that some sectors do require long-term planning, especially for climate change. And I have highlighted on the left some of the ones that are directly related to cities, for example, land use planning or building and housing or urbanism. So these investments go and support cities for 100 years or more than that in some cases. So this long-term nature of infrastructure includes cities, and the quality of these investments has to be improved with resilience in mind. So the third point is that financial constraints are a key barrier for local governments. And the reason for that is that there is limited local revenue generation by cities, given their limited powers, as well as limited intergovernmental transfers. And this creates problems of all sorts, for example, mainstreaming DRR or building resilience or day-to-day DRR actions. So what should the local governments do in this case? And the UNDRR has some advice on it. And you can refer to this guidebook. And the advice is that integrate DRR in each sector and budget through different functions like sector studies, cost benefit analysis, and sector investments. Because municipal departments have varying roles in DRR. Some have direct roles where there is infrastructure investment, for example, or indirect role where education is involved or other software sectors. So the idea is to incorporate DRR in day-to-day activities and go beyond the standalone projects and identifying day-to-day smaller bottlenecks and smoothing the processes. So in terms of pathways towards resilient cities, what should we be looking at in terms of immediate action by the local governments? So first would be to explore the interface between policy cycle and DRR and building urban resilience. Now, I already mentioned the entry points. So the local government should be looking for entry points, identifying activities that can be initiated, and make a start, and then learn from those little initiatives and move forward. Second is to strengthen stakeholder engagement, map the potential partners, they may be from different backgrounds, and see they may be directly related to the DRR or urban resilience or sustainable development in general, and start to initiate discussions and dialogues with them and explore developing partnerships with them. Look for win-win solutions, look for small or large initiatives, whatever is possible. And the third and the last point is to lobby national governments. So here the local governments have to come together and maybe related to the local government association, which they may be member of, and then lobbying at the national level and international level. And what should they be lobbying for? First thing is that they will be asking for better policies if they are not there already towards DRR and building urban resilience. And second is for larger fiscal transfers to local governments, given the needs and the demands of this area of local government action. So these are some of the points that I thought I would share with you. And such lobbying can be done, especially taking advantages of the International Day for Disaster Reduction, for example. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention, and I'll be happy to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dahiya. Thanks for this excellent presentation and your articulation of the systems thinking in a very practical way of how to take it forward. And of course, your emphasis on disaster or climate risk governance and what do we understand when we say risk governance really stands out very well as a guidance to us in terms of more integrated policies that we are looking at, in terms of more vertical integration across administrative layers, more horizontal integration, bringing in different sectors and stakeholders together to further advance that systems thinking and its implementation. I think very well articulated and very practical way of translating these systems thinking into action when we are dealing either at a national or the subnational or the city level too. Definitely the benefits that you outlined in terms of opening the options around the planning and its implementation at the local level. So that's clearly a win-win, that we are trying to garner here. What really hit me hard is the cost of inaction. We many a times know it implicitly, but it is not explicit in terms of our own, vision and thinking, in terms of our own policies, in terms of the impetus that we, imbue to many of our actions. So I think that, cost of inaction emphasis should really jolt us out of our, comfort zone and make us take immediate action. In terms of the pathways, I think it's very strongly resonates with many of us. There was a decade of urban resilience analysis that we did at our end, and we found this disconnect between the national policies and their local implementation as a clear standout. And that's what we are trying to emphasize when you speak about the interface between policies, that's the DRR and the urban, and the need to overcome that. The stakeholders engagement, I think this has been a point which also came out in Gareth's presentation, and it's again re-emphasized that all of us need to take together. Of course, the most outstanding thing has been that how can a pressure group of the local governments be created to put more pressure on the central government to devolve more finances towards local action and to have more integrated policies and planning there. So very well articulated, very well pieced together. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts on this issue. Friends, colleagues, I understand that there is some internet with issue at my end. I will try to keep the camera off, so in order to make myself more audible. So apologies, for that. I wanted it to be more, sort of face-to-face and not just impersonal. But I think this challenge, sort of forces me to step back from the screen a bit, and I'll be back, of course. I will now, like to invite our practitioners from Armenia country office, UNDP's country office. We have two colleagues joining us, today. Armen Chilingaryan, who has more than 25 years of service in various key governance and management positions at different state-run and non-governmental organizations, from the local to the national and international organizations. He has expertise in disaster management, particularly development and coordination of DRR, preparedness and response projects, conduct of relevant analytical work such as vulnerability and capacity, as well as needs assessments, monitoring and evaluation, and other different files connected therewith. He has worked to develop contingency plans and strategies and policies, and has been part of the design of training modules and courses, as well as organization and facilitation of training sessions, for the DRR, TRM practitioners. Armen will be joined by our colleague, Elen Sahradyan, who is a public policy innovation lead in the SDGs Innovation Lab in UNDP Armenia. Elen is leading public policy innovation and digital transformation projects within UNDP Armenia's SDG Innovation Lab. She has over 10 years of professional experience in national and international settings, the last 3 of which were focused on mainstreaming innovation in different sectors in Armenia, including urban development, taxation, healthcare, police reform, tourism, etc. Within UNDP Armenia's innovation and SDG finance portfolio, Elen has led the project on downscaling the donut economic model in Yerevan and the digitalization of sectoral municipal services for more resilient COVID-19 recovery. With these words, I hand you over to Armen and Elen to take you forward, sharing their experiences from their projects and their interventions at the national and the city level. Over to you for the next 15 minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the introduction, Rajiv. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. Thank you for this very interesting experience and knowledge exchange and your interest to explore Armenia's experience. Today, we'll be talking about our experience in downscaling a new economic model in Yerevan, which will be followed by our efforts in disaster risk reduction in Armenia. Now I'll share my screen for the presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so before deep diving into our work, let me briefly introduce the narrative behind. So we have all witnessed the negative impact of COVID-19 on our development mission and vision. Many things that we have confidently figured out, and the goals that we were advancing towards have changed their course of action because of COVID-19. This required immediate action, and I dare say aggressive interventions, to make sure countries and cities have a chance to recover from this compound crisis. And in this work, we have benefited from UNDP's rapid financing facility to advance our efforts in COVID-19 recovery. The negative impact of COVID has rapidly spread across sectors, and we need systemic tools and approaches to tackle as many essential sectors as possible to ensure consistent recovery. And the donut economic model has been an excellent resource to have impactful and tangible results. And it was successfully piloted in Amsterdam, Portland, Philadelphia before we even embarked on this journey. The model was introduced back in 2012, as many of you might know, by Oxford University Professor Kate Raworth, and reflects 12 key social foundations and 9 ecological ceilings to make sure that no one is left falling short on life's essentials, and that we do not collectively overshoot the planetary boundaries that protect Earth's life-supporting systems. And between these 2 sets of boundaries lies the donut-shaped space that is both ecologically safe and socially just. And this is the space essentially where humanity can thrive. The donut model was downscaled through the creation of 4 lenses, as you can see on the screen. Those are global social and global ecological lenses paired with local social and local ecological lenses. So when considering the model and discussing it with key stakeholders, a very important question emerged. And it was, how can we think of global action when we have so many local problems? And I'm sure many of you have faced this question along the way. And throughout the course of our intervention, we showed exactly how it should be done. The first step entailed taking stock of Yerevan's development strategies, mission, vision, available resources. And it was a very interesting endeavor in terms of trying to understand how the city should develop further. So we looked at the city's 5-year strategic development plan, but the thing was that it was drafted back in 2019, and obviously and logically it did not reflect many of the development challenges that we faced as a result of COVID and other crises. So this was the first challenge that we encountered, and we wanted to make sure that our efforts are aligned with the new reality. Many of you, again, have most probably encountered with this common denomination that different strategies, development actions are put forward potentially without the required amount of engagement, citizen engagement. And we decided to break this cycle by engaging citizens in the process through design thinking. And what we did, we asked this very important question to the citizens and inhabitants of Yerevan, and over 500 of them. Where do they see, where would they like to see Yerevan in 5 and 10 years? And you can see most of their answers on reflected in Yerevan City Selfie. And I've highlighted the green city aspirations that the inhabitants of Yerevan have. And that is the cleanliness, the landscaping and recycling that they want to have more advanced, to see more advanced in Yerevan. And building on the experience and on the city selfie, the next step was the creation of the Yerevan city portrait. And here on your screens, you can see one of the 4 lenses, the local ecological lens. And before drafting the lenses, we encountered another challenge in terms of available data, especially when it comes to understanding the impact of Yerevan city on the global ecosystem, also in terms of climate and ecological risks. So to make sure that the stakeholders are actively engaged in the process and that we take into consideration all lenses in this respect, we organized a co-design workshop with participation from Yerevan municipality, and together with them, we defined the city targets and highlighted the success measurement indicators. And as you can see on the screens, for example, we have this temperature regulation aspect where the city target was set that Yerevan needs to have a forest zone with a perimeter of 25,000 hectares. And this is something very important and an aspiration that all the stakeholders signed up for. Another important dimension from our experience in downscaling the donut economics model in Yerevan was that the donut model has inspired the transformation in other areas. And inspired by this model, we have successfully transformed some sectoral municipal services, and that's part of our efforts in digital transformation. And again, building on this success that has completely eliminated all paper-based processes within Yerevan municipality when it comes to the services that were digitalized, it also helped to advance their efforts in climate change. And of course, then we embarked on the journey of building a new multifunctional public space in Yerevan, where students from different schools and kindergartens could come together to organize their lessons in biology and other subject matters. And again, this would come to serve the country's, the city's aspirations in the climate change dimension. And what's next in this regard? We have succeeded in helping the municipality to anchor Yerevan's development on this Yerevan city portrait and the donut economics model in Yerevan. We have organized capacity building activities for over 100 municipal servants, and we were very happy to learn actually quite recently that the Council of Elders will pass a decree where building on the findings and making reference to the donut economic model and the city portrait will be mandatory starting from January 2023. So this is our efforts with regards to downscaling the donut economics model in Yerevan, and over to my colleague Armen to share his experience on disaster risk reduction. Thank you.
Thanks, Elen, for excellent presentation. Can you just make full screen share if possible? Thanks. So the cooperation with the municipality of Yerevan. Let me. Okay. Okay, thanks. So the cooperation with the municipality of Yerevan and UNDP started in 2010 on urban resilience, because the Yerevan municipality was the first city in Armenia that officially joined the Making Cities Resilient campaign. And then since that moment, the joint regional project was implemented in 2014. But then we have the government change, and this is one of the critical challenges that we are facing with in not only in Armenia, but I should say in Central Asia and South Caucasus region. Because when we have a new government, then there is a need to start or restart the process of education, capacity building, etc. Because usually when we are starting the discussions with the government, they think that disaster risk reduction and climate change are standalone activities and not the integral part of the overall development process. So that's why it is really critical to start from the capacity building. And we have started our small project that was funded from UNDP headquarters with the organization of a workshop on disaster risk management, where we also presented the urban risk management and resilience strategy. The workshop was conducted jointly with the Ministry of Emergency Situations, Municipality of Yerevan for their staff, and also for the partners of Disaster Risk Reduction National Platform. So in Armenia, we have this kind of platform where we ensure the participation of all actors dealing with disaster risk reduction, resilience building, or climate change adaptation. So we had in this workshop the scientific institutions, the private sector representatives, academic institutions, as well as the international and local organizations. And the second process that was initiated, it was jointly with the Mayors for Economic Development project that Ellen presented. Why? Because usually it is much easier to have a unified and integrated approach, especially when we are talking about the urban resilience and also partnership within the UNDP practices, than to work separately. So in this regard, it was agreed with the municipality of Yerevan and of course with UNDP ongoing projects as well, that we have to partner with each other, and we need to have integrated approach in this regard. Then UNDP, of course, with the support of local and international experts, we have integrated the overall disaster risk management approach into the strategic development process of Yerevan. And there were some critical directions that was identified during these workshops and discussions. And one of them was the enhancement of early warning system in the country, and especially for the municipality of Yerevan, because they were in the process of the modernization of early warning system, and there were no any unified standard in place. So there, the municipality requested to UNDP to come up and to build, to actually formulate the early warning system unified standards that was accepted and endorsed by the Ministry of Emergency Situations and the municipality of Yerevan. And it became a model for further standardization and procurement of early warning systems and installation as well. The second achievement that we have registered, this was the GIS concept that was developed for Yerevan city. And of course, the more detailed term of reference for housing sector. This was one of the requests that we received from the municipality. And this was the only support that we could provide within the small amount and within the ongoing project cycle. But the cooperation is established, and also we have discussed the future activities. Lenjan, next slide, please. It was agreed with the municipality Yerevan to come up with a joint project using the co-financing principle. So they are, the Yerevan municipality stands ready to finance about 500K project that will be their contribution to improve the above mentioned directions. First of all, for the strengthening of GIS capacities to obtain the necessary GIS technologies, support with the professional capacity building, digitalization, remote sensing, etc. This is really very critical and important because usually the decision makers are facing with the lack of information on relevant hazards, risks, and also risk scenarios. So that's why it is important to ensure that the proper technologies are localized in place and they have enough capacity to utilize the information or even actually formulate some scenarios. The second priority direction, this is the improvement of legislation for multi-hazard early warning systems, because the system that exists in Armenia is not covering all the hazards relevant in Yerevan. For example, the weather extremes, the mud flow, and landslides are not covered with the proper early warning system. So this is also ongoing project, ongoing process in Armenia. We have established good cooperation with the Ministry of Emergency Situations, with the municipality of Yerevan, and also with the private sector. And we are now testing the new systems for early warnings. But there is a need to update and upgrade the existing legislation for this purpose. So this is one of the priority directions again that was highlighted. And of course, the establishment of unified command center, which is really priority for Yerevan, considering the number of population, the increasing number of population, and considering all the hazards and risks that exist in the city. So in this regard, there is a need to ensure that the overall process, especially during the emergencies, the emergency management process, are well controlled and monitored from the one unified command center. And also this goes to the hazard assessment, development of risk scenarios, and providing this information to all stakeholders from the one point, from one command center. And support with the conducting a science-based multi-risk assessment for earthquake, landslides, flash floods that are the main hazards actually in the territory of Yerevan. So this will support to have the relevant information, to get the relevant scenarios, and also to use this kind of information during the decision-making process. So those are the agreed directions that with the Yerevan municipality, but of course there is a need to come up with the unified concept and unified efforts to ensure that disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation principles are properly integrated into the overall city development process. And also the municipality has enough capacity and professionals to deal with these challenges. I think this much from our side. If you have questions, so we'll be happy to answer to them. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Armen and Elen. I think excellent sharing of your practical experiences from advancing urban resilience action at the city level. I really like how a particular donut economic model is being downscaled to help city and its stakeholders understand and address some of these compounded crises, and of course to develop some indicators to measure that progress, improve urban services through harnessing the potential offered by digital technologies, as well as addressing the capacity building needs, and the specific that is being implemented or is underway to ensure that the urban administration, the municipality, and the other stakeholders understand what urban resilience entails, and what are the specific actions that can be advanced to further augment that, including early warning systems, including using GIS in the housing sector, and the other plans. I think this really puts it together that step-by-step actions are being taken to advance action on that, with an overall objective being that DRCC are integrated into the overall city development planning, as well as what you mentioned, an economic model there, so that the investments made in development are not sort of undermined by risks or hazards, etc. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Now I would like to invite your colleague Ljubica from UNDP North Macedonia. She's project manager with interdisciplinary background in architecture, urban planning, resilience, climate change, and innovation. She has wide experience in leading several projects that tackle different areas in climate change and environmental protection, while supporting urban design that facilitates city resilience and adaptability to climate challenges. She strives to build most of her work upon existing social and environmental capital in all projects to create a resilient, meaningful, context-specific public spaces that are accessible for all. I think excellent perspective, Ljubica, there, and I hand the floor over to you for the 15 minutes to walk us through your innovative engagement at the city level. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eren. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the colleagues around the world. I will just start with the sharing of the presentation. It's, can you see the presentation? Is it okay?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be part of this Urban Talks and to share this virtual space with great minds and great audience. Today, I will try to speak more on the activities that UNDP country office North Macedonia implemented in the last years to help city of Skopje be more resilient and adaptable to climate change effects. 1/3 of the total population of our country lives in the city of Skopje. the capital, and significant number also commute daily in the capital from other regions and beyond. Due to the rapid urban growth, the city's ecological footprint is unbearable, and the air pollution has emerged as a dramatic health threat with no easy solution for it. As you can see from the photo, the city of Skopje is overbuilt with great infrastructure, and unfortunately, this trend is elevating every day. In the next photo, you will see city of Skopje as one of the most polluted cities in the world. So in order to respond to these challenges and many others, the UNDP country office supported city of Skopje in the last several years to help the city in finding different models and solutions to these challenges that the city is facing, and create more resilient city and communities that will leave no one behind. So where it all began, most priority measures to address the future impacts of climate change were identified in the climate change strategy, Resilient Skopje. These priority measures were identified in several different fields to prepare city of Skopje to be resilient and to establish better planning of the city. In our work as part of the Resilient Skopje project that was follow-up and was based on the Resilient Skopje strategy, the project have implemented different set of activities in different priority areas, as urban heat islands, erosion, water, biodiversity, and disaster risk reduction. All these priority measures were interlinked with one purpose: to reduce the climate change effect. I will start with the urban heat islands. We have developed an urban heat island map for city of Skopje. This map was developed with using of thermal camera, and the urban heat when the urban heat island map was developed, it revealed that one of the buildings within the core of the central area is the warmest urban hotspot in the city, with 9 Celsius degrees. So this is that building, higher than the city square. The thermal mapping also revealed that another roof of one of the public buildings in the city of Skopje was identified as a hotspot. As a proof of model, we added value to the city by implementing green roofs on both locations as a nature-based intervention in dealing with climate change effects. We regenerated these public spaces and created sustainable landscapes to deal with the extreme weather events and to enrich the biodiversity within the core of the city. And today, these are spaces that are fostering interaction of citizens and are accessible for all. The thermal map also identified that most of the parking lots in the city are hotspots and need to be addressed. So we have prepared basic design for a project for a green parking lot in front of the Skopje Zoo in order to minimize the heat on the parking lot and the area. This model can be replicated to the other parking lots within the city. We might think that nature has been unconnected to our urban spaces, but trees has always been an essential part of the city. Trees are like natural sponge. They absorb stormwater runoff before releasing it back to the atmosphere. The importance of the trees and the greenery within the city is huge. It's a huge importance, and it's essential in fighting climate change, pollution, and natural disasters. But the trees are not just critical to the health of the city infrastructure. They vital role in health and of the citizens. In order to establish better management of the public greenery, we have developed Green Catastrophe for City of Skopje. Around 30,000 trees and shrubs were georeferenced and inventorized from all the boulevards, parks, public enterprises in the city of Skopje. These trees and shrubs were inventorized with detailed attributes when it comes to the type, height, health condition of each tree, but also how much CO2 emissions are absorbed every day from these trees and greenery. The catastrophe is a great tool for future urban planning of the city and for preserving and protecting of the greenery within the city, but also the biodiversity. Urban greenery does not benefit just the people, but it preserves the natural biodiversity, making the city home of various local plants and different species. That is why habitat preservation is very important in the city. And in addition to the green catastrophe, we have prepared a map of all the biotypes within the city of Skopje, an inventory of the riparian habitats, which are the water habitats. These three products, the urban heat island map, the green catastrophe, and the biotope map, can help the future urban planners to take in consideration the greenery and the biodiversity within the city in developing the future urban plans in order to preserve it and protect it. When it comes to erosion, greening of the city means planting trees, shrubs in spaces that previously don't have plant vegetation. We have prepared a map for the eroded areas within the city of Skopje. And one of the areas that was identified as a high level of erosion was the slopes of Kare Fortress. This was marked as a high priority potential erosion area. So we have greened these slopes with an area of around 4 hectares in an estimate 13,000 seedings. We have also worked on different projects in developing technical documentation for other eroded areas within the city of Skopje that are potential and harmful for the citizens. The city of Skopje and its surroundings are at constant risk of flooding. Skopje have experienced 9 major floods in the last 160 years, and the last one was on 6th of August 2016. We have prepared operational plan and created a simulation with critical infrastructure and plan for evacuation for city of Skopje in order to prevent future hazards. And this plan can be used in the future planning of the city's infrastructure. When it comes to the water, in order to improve the scientific information and the data in field of environment that will enhance the evidence-based decision-making of the city of Skopje and determine the future actions that will advance the local environmental life chain of the city. We have prepared groundwater study for the quality and the quantity of the groundwaters in the city of Skopje and strategy for management of the waters in the city of Skopje. We have installed 10 piezometers in protected areas. These piezometers are with automatic divers that will help us obtain more monitoring data and the quality and the quantity of the groundwater. These are good practices, and we have also other good activities with City of Skopje in preparing inventory of GHG emissions, and also public awareness campaign for the burning of stable fuels around the city. And also we have updated the hazard assessment of City of Skopje and the plan for protection and rescue for the City of Skopje, and the plan for improvement of the fire brigade of City of Skopje. All these are good practices and a proof of models that I wanted to share with you today that can be easily replicated in other municipalities, communities, and by interlinking set of activities, we address different climate challenges, creating prosperous, safe, resilient, and nature-friendly environment for all. Climate change brings extreme weather phenomenon, so we need to adapt new ways of planning and building of the cities. When future planning of the cities, we need to develop holistic tools for measuring the comprehensive impact of projects, not only measuring the economic costs, but social and environmental costs. We should always strive for adaptive architecture and resilient urban planning as important tools that we will use that will help us mitigate influences through appropriate building infrastructure and city planning. We also, and also to be this planning to make the cities resistant to different extreme weather events. We should always be aware that we are the cities we make, and this is our call for action, which reinforces in the new and innovative ways to take bold steps to adapt to the change that is already happening to the world and our cities. Thank you, and I will give the floor to Rayev.
Thank you so much, Ljubica, for your experience. The library good that you are taking. We might 3 degrees, what environment and for resilience in a context, definitely address physical or environment, but also mental dislikes to see that you are in Macedonia testing this very intent. So are because of the time, I would to quick the floor questions from.
Sorry, I think Reggie was cutting out a bit. So we are running slightly over, but we want to give you the time to ask questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. The Q&A part is really the heart of these conversations. There's a question from the chat from Gareth. So Gareth, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your questions? In the meantime,
Yes,
anyone else, feel free to raise your hand or put your question in the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dorini. I have lots of questions, but I do not have time for this session. But the really interesting discussions by Bharat and Elen and Armen and Ljubica too. And Ljubica, thank you for including the link to the Resilient Skopje project. I was really looking at how it seems that you can generate some good positive economic outputs from the green initiatives. And whether I'm imagining that you've done some life cycle costings with including citizen participation in this.
Can I go? Yes. Yeah. So when we are designing, we have designed technical documentation for green corridors for all the recreational spaces in City of Skopje for 3 rivers that are interconnected. And as part of developing this technical documentation, we always involve the citizens. also the NGOs, different academia, different relevant stakeholders, in order to have their opinion on different areas, priority, their requests when it comes to these areas that we did the interventions. So we always included the citizens as part of our planning. I think at the end we have very good products that we can say that everyone is satisfied, and not only it serves the environmental purpose, but it serves the social purpose as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Rajiv is back. Rajiv, can you speak? Is your connection better?
Yeah, sure, I can. I will not turn the camera on just to be on the safe side. So yeah, thanks for stepping. So you raised for our words, or we quickly move the wrap. Okay, so I think there are no questions. I don't see any in the chat also. So let me thank our panelists and the experts, Professor Bharat, Gareth, as well as colleagues from the UNDP country offices, Armenia and North Macedonia, for your excellent presentations, for sharing thoughts and ideas. Common strands have emerged, through respective presence. The key is being, of course, a great emphasis. Governance issue clearly stands out when we speak in terms of strengthening the risk governance. We are not just thinking about the components, that the policy, the strategy, the institutions, etc., but we are also speaking in terms of how the entire governance processes, shape up. What is the decision-making, process that is involved there? Different needs and priorities being into account through the engagement of diverse sectors and stakeholders. Second point, which clearly again stands out, is about wider stakeholder engagement. This definitely, came out in Gareth's presentation, as well as Professor Bharat mentioned in the multi-level governance outline that he presented, especially the horizontal integration there, which will have spin-off benefits, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of integrated policies as well as their implementation. The need to localize action, I think much of our thinking now needs to be taken down to the ground level to start building up that impact. So sort of a bottom-up resilience building has to be started and initiated at the city level itself. We must recall here the words of the UN Secretary General he gave in the recent C40 Mayors Conference, where he said that cities are where the climate change battle will largely be won or lost. So the cities, while being impacted the most because of climate change impacts, are also the ones who are perhaps willy-nilly contributing the most towards that sort of an adverse scenario. So we need to work at both the ends. And when we say that we are trying to integrate DRRCC into it, that's what our intention at this time is. That there are risks too that the cities face, and there are the risks from which emerge from these cities. So our a resilient building having this input into risks too, as well as risk from development, and of course to risk into economic development and effort as out by Armenia as well as by North Macedonia. So thank you so much for your engagement today. We will be sharing the presentations. I think the link is already there up in the chat. Both Professor Bharat and Mr. Gareth have agreed to take any questions or provide further information over emails. Please feel free to reach out to them or through us anytime you want to have the benefit of expert advice, if I might say so. And also to announce that our next talk session will be tech urbanization and how it can be used to rejuvenate a city and a community. This will take place next Wednesday on 7th of December at 2 p.m. Istanbul time. More information about the session, including the link, join that. The speak the agenda will be shared in due course. So thank you so much again to our experts today who made a very interesting, thought-provoking presentations. Many insights have already been shared. We will finish some more time to digest imbibes and maybe some of those brain waves to further build up and keep sharing these ideas across. It's an imperative that we definitely need to work together on, and I think it's perfect us to show that vision and collaboration. So thank you so much for your investment and contribution. Thanks, Professor Bharat. Thanks for accepting our invite to join.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Apologies for running over slightly, and hopefully see you next week. Thank you.
And Dharini and Rajiv
Yes.
and everyone, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. It was an honor to be involved in it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all of
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you for having us. Wonderful effort. Great.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.